All right, so here we have a video of Derek Jeter about to attack the ball and do what he does best. So let's break this down. And again, this isn't a full batting analysis. I'm just breaking down piece by piece for you to pay attention to. So I want you to pay attention right now to the backside and what exactly happens to it. So first up, as we already discussed, we're going to notice Jeter here going to his stride to split. He's got a great leg lift, and he actually puts that weight and that squat into his other front hip, which is exactly what we want. We don't want him getting too tall, straightening out his back leg, so that's perfect right there. Now we have Jeter going into his front heel plant. Now, I mentioned to you that if you study and look closely at players' heels, once they go to heel plant, they're actually both on the ground for a short amount of time, a very short amount of time. If they're up, maybe it's like an inch, but they're very, very close to the ground. This is just an elite type of position to be in, and still having a solid base, because it really allows for that tight, loaded up, eccentric movement in the top half, and a longer pullback as well. So the next phase that we're going to see Jeter get to is the activation of the backside. So his front heel planted, back heel split second on the ground, but eventually back heel lifts up. First move, as we know and already discussed, is the hip. Okay? So remember that. Always review here. Hip move. Okay. Back heel is coming up. Now, I want you to pay attention to the back leg. A good marker for this is the knee. You want to make sure that that back knee stays nice and flexed and doesn't get tall. A lot of times when we have our players straighten up the front side and make sure they post up, they'll bring up that backside, kind of becoming two, call them chopstick legs, or two kind of straight legs like this. This gets him too tall, out of the zone, loses power, no point to build up the power if it's going to come upward. A lot of issues with that. But what Jeter does here is exactly what we want our players to do. Has nice flexion in that, and you want to connect that leg to that front side without coming too upward and off that path and that load up of energy. I always compare it to the cocking of a gun. I mean, not to bring weapons into this, but I always compare it to that pullback to release in a straight line. Very important to transfer that power. Now, Jeter is utilizing that ground, as you can notice, on kind of like the ball of his foot. He's using his hamstrings in the backside, lighting it all up to drive that weight forward versus sitting on that backside and squishing the bug. As I was discussing previously, what do we use as our marker? Okay, what's the best marker for us to use to make sure that our player is going down into the pitch versus coming up and off with their back leg? Best marker to use is the belt buckle. Okay, so we're going to move ahead here, and let's get to Jeter's back heel lift. So his backside's going, his backside's moving. Now he wants to stay as long as possible on this line of his belt buckle. This will keep him in the zone, release the built-up power for a nice compact explosion through the hips, using that separation that we built up the correct way, not losing any power, and then using his bat as an accessory, whipping through the zone. So let's see if he crosses off that line. And wow, he's perfectly on it, perfectly beautiful. His bat leg looks great. We'll get to the barrel. But I want you to notice his backside mainly. His backside activated perfectly, throwing straight ahead to his front side. Now, that back bend in that knee is important to load up the power and throw it exactly where and when we want to release that. That front side pressure in his calves and his inner thighs is being used by that ground. He's pushing off that ground. He's using the ground. The ground's using him. And on top of it, he is on this line, and he did not come upwards, which is what you see a lot of players do. So that backside gets activated. That transfer of that activation has to be done correctly. That back knee has to be bent. And more importantly, a lot of players do ask, well, if my back knee is going to be bent, how do I bring my backside forward? Well, what it is if you notice what he does with his knee here, okay? It's not his knee. Remember, it's his hips that's activating it. But let's just call it out for the sake of being a knee here. He keeps it on that same plane that it's at, but he brings his hip forward on the rotation. That in turn allows the knee to follow, and that foot, because of that weight transfer, is just beautiful, will get pulled on its front side when performed correctly. Okay? Now let's see here with that ball coming in. Here it is. At this point, as you know, we want to have that front post up. Let's see if he buckles it in. And yeah, nice post up for him to go around solid right there. All right? So don't forget about that backside and the importance of it. Leading with the hip, knees coming with it. Force off the ground, using the pressure of the ground to push that drive forward, releasing that energy. And whipping through the ball.